Do it. Do it. Do it. You there?
I haven't seen it come up in YouTube yet.
So anyway, that's the secrets of the universe. Okay? Oh, hi, are we back online? Oh, so yeah, now let's pretend like we're having our conference again. So,
I had a little
Sorry, I'm leaving.
You got it.
I have
no, that
worlds.
was a slurp.
No,
Sorry, I'm leaving. I have worlds to conquer.
Right.
Yeah.
that's right.
What was different this time? We did an exercise where you're looking for the big picture goals for the year. Now you did an exercise using accessing the same space, but now you're looking at detailed procedure. What was different?
You didn't actually tell us to repeat the entrance into the space. So I didn't do that, but I was able to, contact right away and get
Right.
back into that space.
Right. You know how to do that.
Yeah.
Right. So what's different about the first exercise versus this one?
The first exercise for me was like a really large painting. This was like looking at real fine points of it.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of like, I guess, to tune your mind into a systematic approach to the
Right.
bigger.
Okay. Yeah, that's what's key with this one, is learning how your mind is wired for differences. Who found the first one easy? The first exercise relatively easy?
I think the first one was easier.
Of course it's easy.
Yeah. How many found the second one easy? A couple of you?
Yeah.
Okay, good. And anybody online who wants to chime in on that, I welcome your input. It's common to see one versus the other as easier because of we're wired, and that's a good clue on your consciousness of what you need to work on, right? If you have a really good experience and a good ability to tune into something intuitively, and especially if it's practical, it's related to day-to-day earth things, that tells you which path on the tree of life is you're using for that. If you can do something intuitively, but you more easily connect with the big picture celestial kind of things, the movements of the universe, you're on a different path. Do you know which two those would represent? Any ideas? Given your work recently?
Well, what I find interesting is I think, what you were saying is the detailed thing was probably going to be more of the male pillar.
Exactly.
Because the masculine mind tends to get into the details of a project quicker, whereas the feminine mind seems to see the bigger picture and on some appearances has a harder time dealing with the details.
Right. So the mental sphere of Hod, the intuitive sphere of Nitzak, this is more of the astral plane here. So, and you're here, right? So that first example I gave a second ago, that you good intuitive connection about earth-based things, you're on the path of the moon. Right? That tells you you do that one well. If it's hard for you then to kind of like tune into the universe, the big picture, higher spiritual planes things. But anyway, that's the path over here, the path of the stars. Now, the path that this second exercise was most using was which one? You can probably narrow it down to one of these two. The path of judgment or discernment, or the path of the sun. maybe. Depends on how you work. The average male is going to be doing this. There's judgment, there's this discernment, and we just go right there. Right? Do we miss things in the process? Probably. That's why this work is designed to balance left and right. So the path of the sun is going to be connecting the mental sphere with the intuitive or the astral sphere. This is a good path for your ability to visualize outcomes. One of the things that will help, whether you're male or female, that will help this process of tapping into this specific intuitive space to plan your year and execute the plan of the year, to set your goals, is by adding texture to your desired outcome. What do I mean by that?
Can you just try for a minute bringing the board all the way forward towards the screen? I think it's tilted up pretty straight at this point, but you really can't read it when it's back. So, okay, you can move it back.
Okay. What I mean by that is when you visualize the outcome, let's say, oh, I'm going to build a house this year. You need to add what color of the house, what is the material of the house, how does those make me feel, what is my emotional state when I get the house done. You're focusing on the finished product, adding as much detail and especially emotion about that, because that's what's going to cause you to integrate all these paths. And especially from here down, these lower four spheres, this is really where we're mastering the tonal. Okay? So let's talk about two paths, this one and this one. This is the path of the world, and in some cases the path of the universe, right? This is the path when all this integration has been done. This is sometimes considered, because it's part of this center pillar, the final path into creation. You've planned, you've dreamed, now it's time to make it happen. This is the path that makes it happen. This makes it happen, you're drawing on your intuition and your intellect, and those three paths combine the Rainbow Bridge, right? This is the path that really summarizes what I'm saying about this texture, this completeness in your visual. So when you tap into this state, which is this link, this intuitive state, the inner teacher is designed to tap into Tiferet via Yesod and the path of the world and temperance. Yeah.
Okay, you are using these fingers to point with, and this finger is sticking out. Use your pointer finger to point.
Okay. So the path of temperance in the Tarot, this is the path of balance, bringing everything into balance in the higher spheres. This is the inner teacher exercise. This path, of course, the path of Pei or the path of the Tower, is often associated with change, often chaotic and disruptive change. But when you think about the two spheres it's connecting, Hod and Nitzak, the path or the sphere of the mind and the sphere of the intuition. This is the path that you use to balance those two imbalanceable qualities have to be balanced. Right? Your touchy-feely right brain, your hard, ruthless, logical left brain have to be merged. That's the path. in our bodies, in our central nervous system, there is a structure in our brain called the corpus callosum. That's the bridge between the two halves. It's like right there, right in the middle. It's about this big, and any neural pathway between the two hemispheres of the brain passes through the corpus callosum. The rest of this body, it really acts like it's two brains. And it shares a little bit of information back, and that link is there, and the two hemispheres of the brain goes way back evolutionarily on this planet, so that the early creatures could learn how to coordinate the two sides of the bodies and walk, move, swim, run, avoid being eaten, catch something to eat, those kind of things. So that's what the corpus callosum does, is it integrates all those functions. So when you go home and you practice this exercise over the next few weeks especially, but any time into the future, this is yours, make it your own. But when you do that, pay particular attention over to the kinds of things that come through easily when you do this, compared to the kinds of things that you still have a struggle with. And when you find things like art that you struggle with, for me it was art, it was a struggle. Now look at me. I have a painting, right? Look what I did. This painting probably will never hang in the Guggenheim Museum, but there it is.
You could maybe make it into the Guggenheim, if you framed it right.
Well, okay, so
Because the Guggenheim
really,
is modern art.
yeah. Now, carpentry and that kind of finishing carpentry, that's artwork, right? That counts. This whole house is my artwork in that sense. So I could make a frame. The frame would get in the Guggenheim. Not sure that painting would be inside it. But
I've seen worse.
There you go.
8 or 10 more, and then I think I'll be onto something with this particular subject matter. For those who, I think everybody online tuned in last night, so I don't need to go into that again. So this is a way, when you're mastering your tonal, now I think you're starting to see some of the things I've taught over the last year coming together. Right? Knowledge of the tree of life, knowledge of that warrior's attitude to bring it, understanding of your relationship between your essence and your machine. Those are the key concepts. And now it's time, it's a mini graduation, right? It's time to, okay, the days of the theory are over, the days of the doing have begun. Right? So you have to give yourself the impetus to carry this forward.
Can I comment on that?
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the things that I've been looking at, just kind of understanding where you were going through with the different ways that our brain works and what we're going to resonate with more as a download style, let's say, is that commonly, I think for most of us, is that we're going to revert back to what we know and with the ego brain of how to accomplish that. So let's say, that you want to do more art this year. Okay, well, you got a little bit of that in the first one. You might have got a little bit more about what the subject matter will be. But if you've never drawn before and have this huge learning curve about which end of a paintbrush to pick up and stuff, there might be, well, what do I got to do first kind of thing. Well, that's where our logical mind kicks in, and I think it's really important to be careful of that and really be listening to your guide and really be listening to your inner teacher, who's going to tell you something that, like in my first example where I said, I knew that those thoughts were thoughts I brought to the table, not necessarily what my inner teacher was saying. And when my inner teacher said something it was very different than what I thought.
That happens, that's happened to me a lot. It's like, you want me to do what? Kind of like, okay, and
So-
it works.
Where I was going with that,
Let's
bless
see.
you,
Good, yeah.
Good Gesundheit.
is that we don't always know how it will be accomplished, and we should not ever let something be, you know, like let's say you get a download. Like I did this writing workshop, and we went to our inner library and saw the books that we're supposed to write, and it's like, I can't even write a letter. How am I going to write a book? You know. But it's not the how. That's not what you're really looking for. You know, let that be the inspiration that comes through the how, and just trust that, okay, it's that vision of what the finished product will look like that you want to set your sights on.
So that's where I was going right
Okay.
here at the end, was add that texture, add that richness, and keep coming back to it. When you get another piece of data that you add to it, then just keep doing in your mind, get it on paper, do drawings of that. Draw something, make something graphic about, draw a flow chart. You know, some people who grew up in the 60s and 70s and learned how to do computer program flow charts. That's a skill. That's a form of art. Get it captured. Okay, so bridging the gap. So now you have a goal. You have a process. You've added in the richness and details. You start paying attention to how your mind works. And when you know that you're strong in one thing and weak in another, go do the thing you're weakest at least twice as much as the thing you're strongest at. So I've been practicing art way more than I've been practicing chess lately, as an example. Because that's what I've needed. And for all of you, same kind of thing. You know, those of you who are really good at art, keep doing your art. You're really good at writing, keep doing your writing. And you're really lousy at chess, start learning chess or mahjong or one of those logical things. Sudoku puzzles.
I've been doing a lot of mahjong lately.
Have you? Good.
Mhm.
Computerized or the real game?
No, computer. It's
Yeah.
on the phone.
I've never owned a mahjong game, but I don't even remember all the rules. It's been years since I did a computer one.
So Little Eagle offers that for artwork, use the reed, the actual act of creation, to be in the actual creator's creation force. Get out of the mind and let your hand spirit go in the artwork, hit the deep well.
That's the goal. Find the void. The flame in the void. So, this afternoon we're going to be talking about a daily discipline and different ways that can look. I understand you can't really stay for that part. Okay. Because even this, I've gone through a couple different ways of doing this exercise to get you connected to that space, and that's important to know that that's your space. There used to be the computer thing called MySpace. I don't think that's nearly as big a thing anymore since Facebook came out. But that's your space. That's your consciousness. That's your secret place where you get to go anytime you want. And the goal becomes getting things out of your space and into the physical world. That's the act of creation, as Little Eagle says. It's the act of manifestation, creating something out of what was nothing apparently in the physical world. Of course, the plans have all been laid and drawn. So one way of looking at the tree of life for this process is you really understand the spheres in the middle and the upper parts of the tree and the pathways, and you look at the energies of the pathways. It describes the creative process. First there's a vague notion, and then the notion gets fleshed out, and then the outside influences that need to support that are brought in. And then it ends up in Nitzak, where the dream of Tiferet gets fleshed out. It ends up in Hod, where the logical details get added. Those get combined in Yesod, which is the astral and into the etheric. And that's where a lot of ideas die. Because people don't develop that discipline to pull the trigger and do it. Right? Whatever it is. And that the it's you were writing down earlier today. And then there's the divine timing factor. I'm Scottish and Viking, for those who don't know and have never met me before. Anyone who has pretty much knows that. So we have a very effective way of solving most problems when you're a barbarian warrior in Scotland or Viking land. And I can solve them right now. And the result is not always as elegant as it would be if I used a less violent means of solving problems. That was one of the great lessons I had to learn in this lifetime. I had to get past that, right? See a problem, put a problem on a pike. Out in your front yard, heads on pikes. We invented that game. And sometimes the best way to solve a problem is wait. So the divine timing, learning to tap in to the divine timing is kind of one of the next exercises, which I think we're going to do this afternoon. And I'll just give you the instructions since you have to get in your chariot and go, is you will do the same inner teacher exercise that we did before. Peace, peace, peace. I am, I am, I am. Love, love, love. Third eye, crown. And then for the question at hand, simply ask the question, when should you do this? So we're going to do that exercise this afternoon. Working in harmony with the seasons and working in harmony with your own higher essence and intelligence are two extremely powerful ways of learning to master your tonal, and they're the two things that they don't want you to do. Don't go inward, don't go direct, and ignore that man behind the curtain teaching you solar cycles, lunar cycles, etc.
Well, I think as far as those, the timing, that kind of brings us back to the cycles of the moon and the sun and the day and all of that, that we can manifest whatever, whenever, but if we utilize these extra powers of aligning our manifestation ritual with the full moon or whatever, it's gonna have more impact.
Yeah.
And, the one thing I wanted to mention is that, you know, because my career was in costume design. So if you think about the fact that we would meet the first time with a director and they would kind of lay out what the vision was. They would talk for an hour or more about what their vision was, and then the artists had to go away and think about that vision and come back with some kind of artistic response to the vision, whether it's a storyboard or some fabrics or, you know, a little scale model of, well, this is what I was thinking or whatever. But after that, there's still like 6 weeks of design meetings where we just talk about everything that's possible. We don't say this is what we're doing yet. We talk about the possibilities.
Mhm.
But when we go into the production meetings, it's like, yeah, no, the dress is gonna be red and it needs to be low cut and she's gonna wear high heels and, you know.
Well, of course.
Right, and it's gonna
Girl in
be
the red
this
dress.
kind of a backdrop with this kind of lighting, and then everybody goes off and they start working. And there's this work period. And yeah, we have meetings still, not to change things, but sometimes something comes up that well, that didn't work, we're gonna have to, you know, come up with a different way of doing it. But the point is that when you get to actually, you have this launch window, which I assumed you were gonna talk to about us again at some point, is, you know, in launching satellites, it may be years before you get another opportunity,
Yeah.
another window to launch. And in costume design, there is only one window, and that's opening night, and you don't miss opening night. So we need to realize at some point we have to actually shift out of the idea phase and into, no, this is what I want it to look like, and in which case we put on the director's hat and we have that vision. But then we start using the skills of the different designers to build and create what we want.
Well, that's kind of where we're going with this timing, because without going into details, because they're not important, we've seen some things recently in our life shift that were considered problems and years in the making, and just by doing basically nothing,
Or the right thing.
or do the right thing, and then if organizations or people aren't receptive, you just walk away and you let them implode, right? So doing nothing, sitting quietly and doing nothing is an action. It sounds a little oxymoronic, but let's suppose you got a glass jar full of water and there's silt mixed in it, and you need the water to be clear. What do? You can devise all manner of filters and pumps and centrifuges and things like that, or you just sit it quietly and do nothing.
Let it settle.
And it'll settle, and now you've got clear water, and whether you need to siphon that off slowly and carefully till you get down to the very sludge at the bottom, so you have clear water, or whether it's going to be used right there to pass light through, whatever, right? So the divine timing is the next piece of doing this. It's like, you know what you're going to do sometimes this next year. You've got detailed plans. You've fleshed out the details. Everything's lined up. You could start right now. But maybe now is the wrong moment. So pull in your knowledge of lunar cycles, solar cycles, and you come up with the best plan you can. I think it should start here. I think it should do here and here. And then do one of these exercises asking when. You know, once you've got the plan in place, ask your inner guide, ask that inner teacher, is this the plan? Is this the right timing? And be open to hearing the answer no. Or wait. Not today, not this month.
But when you do go, you gotta go all in.
Right.
And that's what I see.
Mm.
Most people, they just wanna dabble in this and dabble in that, and they don't want, even just picking on you with the art project, you know, it's like, okay, well, maybe there's this whole learning curve, and you go out and you buy some paints and some, you know, canvases and stuff, and you try a few things, and you're disappointed with the results, so you don't like do anything else with it.
Well, that was
You
mine.
gotta push pat, and that's where the bringing it comes through. I
Right.
think the biggest effort we need is just to keep pushing the envelope.
So I've done some things with art off and on over the last 3, 4, 5 years, trying to get to this point, and I could never make what was on the paper or on the canvas match what was in my head. I can visualize, I know exactly what I want it to look like, and I couldn't make it happen, so then I'd get frustrated and put it away. And it was, finally, it's like, I get my stubborn Scots hat on, and I'm not going to accept that. It's going to do, and I'm going to do it now. So this one piece over and over and over again isn't the only art I've been doing. I've done a number of other things, and you will all have an opportunity to see some of them at some point. Some of them I should just take out and burn. And not as part of one of these exercises. And I probably will here soon. I've got a pile of stuff now that was a fail.
You can always paint over it.
Right, I can always paint over it. Well, if it's a hard canvas kind of like thing like that, then I would. If it's just on a piece of paper torn off one of those acrylic tablet things from Walmart, it's just getting burnt.
I mean, you would be amazed at all the paintings that are under paintings that are under paintings of the masters.
Yeah.
You know.
And part of that was simple economics too. Canvas and paint weren't cheap back then. So if this one didn't work out and the person who commissioned wasn't going to buy it, well, I can't afford another one. I better just do the next version over the top. And, so this is what's going to be kind of your plan of action, and we're going to go into a few details of that this afternoon. And what was the other thing I said we're going to do? Oh, timing and when. And then the detailed plans is kind of the focus of the afternoon.
So tell me that again. What are we doing?
We're going to do repeat the exercise, only asking when on one of your projects. And then we're going to be talking about how to get the details of like a daily plan, kind of micromanaging or giving you ideas to how to micromanage your personal practice and still have time left over for eating, sleeping, and pursuing your profession.
And just so you know, all the students, I had sent you a worksheet for that last year on how to, start trying to come up with a personal practice. And I was even kind of reprimanding myself just yesterday because there's some projects that I haven't been able to get done. And I feel like I have to be in the right place and have enough time to do them, to get them done, so they keep getting pushed on the back burner. And it's like, no matter how busy or how important our lives are, we deserve to have 30 minutes a day to work on self, to
At least that.
a minimum, But the point is that we can waste 20 minutes a day, every day, on the internet or just, whatever, because we don't have time. But I think it's part of that willing it, bringing it, is to almost selfishly demand my time to do my 20-minute meditation and write for 10 minutes or whatever it's going to be. And that's the thing, is there's nobody telling you how it needs to be, what it needs to look like.
This is
I always found this fun, and is at this time of year, I would determine what I never called them New Year's resolutions, but what I wanted to do the upcoming year, I would put those into place before New Year's. So I had already got comfortable with them, but just to buy a new planning journal and kind of like look at the year and kind of think about the things that you want and how that's going to fit into a daily, how do I, if I want this in 6 months, what do I need to start doing now? Those kind of things. I mean, it could be a fun rainy day thing to do.
and even if it's sunny.
It's
The
cold, right?
it's going to be possible for you to master your tonal, your whole world, your whole universe, if you can't master one day. So we're going to start simple this hour. We'll talk about mastering one day. And if you're like me, you're going to write down all the important things you want to get done each day and how much each time you're going to spend on each one. And for, let's say tomorrow, I usually stop writing when I hit about 40 hours. And I go, okay, well that's not going to work, and then I have to back off and be more realistic. But I keep thinking I've got about 40 hours in a day. And if I had about 40 hours in a day compared to everybody else's 24, I'd be way ahead, right? So then reality sets in. We have to come up with plan B. Okay, so it's 12 noon. For those of you who received the RESH instructions in the email, go out there. And it doesn't have to be exactly noon, because for our time zone right now, we're not in the center of that time zone. Ideally, you would go out and you would track when is the exact moment of the sun at that highest point for you. And it's probably going to be 12 noon plus or minus a half hour in any given time zone. So we're going to go out, we're going to do the noontime resh. I invite you to do the same, and then we'll be going offline right now, and we'll be back roughly 1:30-ish shaman time. So that means plus or minus 50%.
Yeah.
So, okay, thank you. Click off.
So Yvonne put in a request to have that personal practice sheet sent to her.
Oh.
So if anybody else wants that again,
Yes, please.
That would be
I
lovely.
will send that out to everyone.
Okay.
That would be
I still have it.
Have you made extra copies so you can use one every day?
Well, I had a personal practice going. I just kind of fall off the bandwagon every now and again.
I understand, and
We-
it's hard,
Still getting back into it.
I was challenged. I was working with one of Coyote's students on some dreaming stuff, and I was asked to do a 20-minute meditation every day. And I did that for 3 months religiously, and then went away for Thanksgiving and got caught in 2 snowstorms, and my phone broke, and we lost internet, and I'm still like trying to get back into my groove again.
Yeah. No, she was outstanding. I was impressed.
What?